you didn't lose her because you crossed a line, said the wrong thing, or failed some hidden test. You lost her while doing exactly what you were taught to do. And that's why this pain feels so disorienting. You showed up on time. You listened. You didn't manipulate, disappear, or play games. You were steady, polite, emotionally available. You replied. You followed through. You made room. And yet, slowly, something shifted without explanation. Messages stayed on scene longer than before. A date that felt solid became flexible, then uncertain, then quietly gone. There was no argument to point to, no clear mistake to correct, no dramatic ending, just distance. And then the sentence that sounds kind, but closes everything. You're such a good guy. It doesn't attack you, which makes it harder to fight. What keeps you awake afterward isn't the loss itself. It's the confusion. You replay the timeline, scanning for an error that never announces itself. The man she drifted toward isn't smarter, deeper, or more considerate than you. He didn't invest more. He didn't care more. He didn't win by being better. He won by being read differently. That realization cuts deeper than rejection because it invalidates the rules you trusted. You were told that effort creates safety, that consistency builds attraction, that being clear prevents misunderstandings. But attraction is not a moral exchange. It doesn't reward good intentions. It responds to signals. And here is the part no one warns you about. You didn't fail because you were wrong. You failed because you were readable. Your availability had no cost. Your interest had no edge. Your presence came without consequence. Instinct doesn't translate that as devotion. It translates it as low leverage. The deepest pain here isn't rejection. It's confusion. The feeling that the game changed without telling you. And confusion is dangerous because it pushes you to do the worst possible thing next time. Try harder. Give more. Explain earlier. Stay closer. That reflex feels logical, but it accelerates the same outcome. Until you understand what was actually being evaluated, this pattern will repeat itself with different faces and the same ending. This isn't about becoming cold or cynical. It's about seeing that attraction isn't destroyed by mistakes. It's eroded by signals. Once you recognize that, the pain stops being personal and starts becoming precise. The reason you keep feeling disoriented is not because you missed something obvious, but because you were trained to solve one problem while being judged by a completely different system. You were raised on social morality. Be respectful. Be emotionally open. Be consistent. Communicate clearly. Treat her well, and things should progress. Those rules help you be a decent man, but they were never designed to create attraction. Attraction is not a moral exchange. It is a biological assessment. While your mind is focused on intention and fairness, her instinct is scanning signals of position, stability, and emotional gravity. This gap is where confusion is born. You feel like you followed the rules and still lost, so you turn the blame inward instead of questioning the framework. This is where Machiavellian thinking becomes useful, not to make you manipulative, but to make you accurate. Machiavelli never cared about teaching men how to be good. He cared about how power is perceived, because perception is what determines outcomes. His observation was simple and brutal. Men are judged by what they appear to be, not by what they mean to be. Attraction follows the same law. Your intentions do not protect you if your behavior signals weakness. Your values do not matter if your actions communicate dependence. This video is not here to promise that you will suddenly become more attractive, because that promise keeps men chasing illusions. The real objective is quieter and more honest. To stop making you invisible. Invisible men are not rejected loudly. They are filtered out silently. They are trusted, liked, even appreciated, and then passed over. When you understand that morality comforts the mind, but instinct decides the outcome, guilt loosens its grip. You stop feeling ashamed for caring and start learning how care is interpreted. The confusion fades when you realize you were never broken, only miseducated. And once the rules are clear, you stop trying harder in the dark and start moving with awareness, restraint, and control. One of the most damaging beliefs men carry is the idea that if you say the right things clearly enough, attraction will follow. This belief feels reasonable because language is how we solve problems, negotiate, and build trust. But attraction does not operate on the same channel. It is a rapid, unconscious filtering process that happens before words are fully processed. Long before meaning is evaluated, posture, rhythm, tone, and behavior have already delivered a verdict. Words arrive late to a decision that biology has already made. This is why two men can say the exact same sentence and get completely different reactions. One says it calmly, without urgency, his body relaxed, his pace slow. The other says it with energy, explanation, and subtle tension in his voice. The sentence is identical, but the signal is not. Instinct does not hear the words. It reads the state behind them. The first man sounds like he is choosing to speak. The second sounds like he needs to be understood. That difference decides everything. Think of the man who talks constantly on a date, filling silence with stories, opinions, reassurances, and questions meant to keep momentum alive. He believes engagement creates attraction, but his behavior tells a different story. It says the moment cannot survive without his effort. Compare him to the quieter man, who speaks less but remains present, who lets pauses exist without rushing to rescue them, who answers without overloading. He is not withholding information, he is regulating his output. Instinct reads that regulation as stability. This is why attraction fades when men overcommunicate. They think clarity creates safety, but safety without tension dissolves interest. Biology is not impressed by explanations. It is impressed by coherence. When your words say one thing, but your body signals anxiety, instinct trusts the body. When your message is warm, but your behavior is rushed, instinct reads imbalance. This is not cruelty. It is efficiency. For thousands of years, quick filtering mattered more than perfect reasoning. That mechanism still runs in the background. This is why trying harder with words often accelerates distance. Every extra explanation reveals that the outcome matters too much to you. And what matters too much loses leverage. The solution is not silence for the sake of mystery, nor is it emotional withdrawal. It is alignment. When posture, tempo, and behavior match calm intent, words regain weight. Until then, no sentence will save a signal that already failed inspection. Biology decides before logic arrives, and once you accept that, you stop arguing with outcomes and start correcting the source. The trap of the good man is painful because it is built on virtues that once made sense. You give more because you were taught that effort proves sincerity. You explain more because you believe clarity prevents misunderstanding. You stay available because you think consistency creates security. None of these actions are immoral, but together they create a pattern that quietly erodes attraction. Biology does not interpret unlimited giving as devotion. It interprets it as excess supply. Where there is no scarcity, there is no tension. Where there is no tension, interest has nothing to attach to. Predictability feels safe. But safety without contrast becomes forgettable. Think of a store that is always open, always discounted, always trying to please every passerby. At first, it feels convenient. Over time, it loses gravity. Nothing there feels urgent. Nothing there feels chosen. Value collapses not because the product is bad, but because access is unlimited. The same logic applies here. When you are always available, your presence stops being felt as a choice and starts being assumed as a constant. When you explain every silence, every shift, every delay, you remove all mystery and replace it with reassurance. Instinct does not reward reassurance. It rewards structure. Many men fall deeper into this trap after sensing distance. They respond by doubling down. They give more attention, more understanding, more emotional labor, believing effort will pull interest back. But effort without leverage does the opposite. It confirms that the connection matters more to you than it does to her. And leverage disappears the moment that imbalance is felt. This is why the good man often becomes invisible without ever being rejected. He is liked, trusted, appreciated, and slowly deprioritized. No drama, no conflict, just replacement. This is not because kindness is unattractive. It is because kindness without limits dissolves position. Attraction needs edges. It needs the sense that access is earned, not guaranteed. Being always available removes that edge. Explaining everything removes friction. Giving endlessly removes consequence. None of this means becoming cold or withholding care. It means understanding that generosity without structure becomes noise. The moment you stop regulating your output, you teach instinct that nothing is at stake. And when nothing is at stake, nothing is protected. Kindness is powerful only when it is selective. Presence is valuable only when it is not automatic. Without limits, even the best intentions fade into the background. Kindness without limits becomes invisibility. Attraction rarely dies from one big mistake. It fades through small signals repeated under pressure, and most men never notice they are sending them. The first signal is neediness, which doesn't mean wanting connection, but needing a specific outcome to feel stable. It shows up when her reply speed controls your mood, when silence feels threatening, when your energy rises and falls based on her attention. Instinct reads that dependence instantly. The second signal is reactivity. The moment her tone cools, you rush to respond. She pulls back, you lean forward. She delays, you explain. Reactivity tells instinct that your emotional center is externally controlled. A man who is moved too easily cannot anchor tension. The third signal is over-validation. You reassure, compliment, affirm, and emotionally support in excess, hoping appreciation will convert into desire. But validation that arrives without friction loses meaning. It feels safe, predictable, and disposable. These signals often appear together in everyday moments. She becomes distant for a day, and instead of holding position, you ask if something is wrong. Clarify your intentions. Soften your tone. She challenges you subtly, and you defend yourself. Justify your actions, explain your character. Each response feels reasonable in isolation. Together, they collapse attraction. The common thread is urgency. You rush to fix what hasn't been defined as broken. And what you rush to fix, you expose as weak. Biology interprets urgency as imbalance. It assumes that if you cannot tolerate uncertainty, you cannot tolerate pressure. This is why trying to save the moment usually destroys it. The man who pauses, instead of reacts, sends a different signal. He doesn't ignore shifts, but he doesn't chase them either. He observes without scrambling. He responds without defending. He He allows silence to exist without filling it with reassurance. That restraint communicates internal stability. It tells instinct that his value does not need immediate confirmation. Attraction survives where there is space to breathe. It collapses where everything is explained, managed, and smoothed over too quickly. This is not about becoming distant or withholding emotion. It is about regulating expression. When you stop feeding neediness, reactivity, and over-validation, you stop leaking leverage. You let moments resolve themselves instead of forcing outcomes. The paradox is simple. The more you try to secure attraction through effort, the more you reveal fear of losing it. And fear is the fastest way to make desire retreat. What many men label as rejection is often something far more precise and far less personal. A test, not a moral test, not a judgment of character, but a pressure test and a stability check. Attraction does not move forward without resistance, because resistance is how instinct verifies what it senses. When a woman becomes colder, sarcastic, distant, or inconsistent, her behavior is not designed to punish you. It is designed to observe you. She introduces pressure to see whether your center holds or collapses. The mistake most men make is taking these moments personally. They assume interest is being withdrawn, so they rush to repair it. They defend their intentions, justify their behavior, explain their tone, clarify their feelings. Each explanation feels like self-respect, but it quietly lowers their position. The man who explains loses altitude. Why? Because explanation signals that the situation has authority over him. It says the moment controls his emotional balance. Instinct reads that instantly. A man who needs to restore harmony immediately cannot sustain tension, and tension is where attraction lives. Consider two reactions to the same test. She makes a sharp comment or suddenly pulls back. The first man tightens. He asks what he did wrong, reassures her, softens himself, and tries to resolve the discomfort. His behavior tells a clear story. Pressure destabilizes him. The second man notices the shift, but does not chase it. He stays calm, responds lightly or minimally, and allows the moment to exist without needing to fix it. His behavior tells a different story. Pressure does not move him. Nothing dramatic happens on the surface, but something decisive happens underneath. Instinct distinguishes between the man who reacts and the man who holds position. Tests are filters, not obstacles. They remove men who need constant approval and select men who can remain grounded without reinforcement. This is why defending yourself is almost always a mistake in these moments. Defense implies accusation. Justification implies doubt. Explanation implies insecurity. None of these restore attraction. They accelerate its exit. Passing a test does not mean saying the right thing. It means remaining the same person under strain. You do not win by proving your worth. You win by not letting the test define you. The paradox is that the less you try to control the outcome, the more control you retain. Stability is not silence for the sake of strategy, nor is it emotional withdrawal. It is the refusal to surrender your frame to temporary turbulence. When you understand that tests are inevitable, they stop feeling threatening. You stop shrinking, defending, or performing. You remain where you are, and that is precisely what the test was designed to find. This is where everything stops being conceptual and starts becoming visible. Because attraction does not shift when you understand ideas, it shifts when your behavior changes under pressure. Silence, axis, and presence are not attitudes. They are actions expressed in rhythm, restraint, and composure. Speaking slower is not about sounding confident, it is about refusing urgency. Speed communicates anxiety. Slowness communicates control. When you slow your speech, you signal that nothing in this moment threatens your position. Reacting less does not mean ignoring signals. It means not surrendering your emotional balance to every fluctuation. When you pause instead of responding instantly, you show that your internal state is not dictated by external stimuli. Holding eye contact is not dominance, it is stability. It tells instinct that attention does not destabilize you, that pressure does not scatter you. Imagine two men on the same date. The first fills every silence with words, jokes, explanations, and questions, constantly checking whether the moment is still alive. His energy rises and falls with her reactions. The second man speaks when there is something to say, listens without rushing to reply, and allows quiet to exist without discomfort. He answers calmly, maintains steady eye contact, and does not rush to adjust himself. Both men may be polite, intelligent, and well-intentioned, but they transmit completely different signals. One is working to hold the moment together. The other is allowing the moment to orbit around him. Instinct feels this difference immediately. Silence terrifies most men because they associate it with loss of control. But silence is not emptiness. It is control. It is the space where tension can breathe instead of being suffocated by reassurance. When you stop filling gaps, you stop begging for continuity. When you stop reacting to every shift, you stop leaking leverage. Presence is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is felt through consistency. A man with access does not chase energy. He contains it. He does not need to manage impressions because his behavior already communicates order. This is not about becoming distant or emotionally unavailable. It is about being grounded enough to let moments unfold without interference. The man who can sit comfortably in silence, hold his posture, and regulate his reactions becomes a reference point in the interaction. He does not need to dominate the room. He stabilizes it. And stability, when paired with restraint, creates gravity. Silence stops being awkward the moment you stop trying to control how you are perceived. It becomes a statement. I am here, I am steady, and I do not need to rush to be chosen. Real power has been distorted by noise for so long that most men mistake control for force and masculinity for dominance. But the kind of power that actually sustains attraction works quietly and internally. Power is not the ability to bend others to your will. Power is the ability to regulate yourself when you are tempted to react, explain, chase, or correct. Self-regulation is what keeps your position intact under pressure. A man who cannot control his impulses will always try to control situations, conversations, or people, and instinct reads that effort as instability. This is why men with full, independent lives feel naturally attractive without trying. They have direction that exists before and after any interaction. Their time has weight because it is already allocated. Their attention feels valuable because it is not endlessly available. When a man has his own rhythm, projects, responsibilities, and standards, he does not need to assert authority. It is assumed. Compare a man whose life pauses the moment interest appears with a man who makes space without abandoning momentum. The first communicates that attraction is his center. The second communicates that attraction is an addition. Instinct responds to the second because it senses structure. This is not emotional distance or arrogance. It is internal order. A man with internal order does not negotiate his value moment by moment. He does not rush to prove relevance. He does not escalate effort when uncertainty appears. He stays regulated. That regulation creates the frame. The frame determines who adjusts and who remains grounded. Control over others produces resistance. Control over yourself produces gravity. Gravity does not need enforcement. It pulls naturally. This is why masculine power is revealed in restraint, not display. The ability to remain calm, consistent, and self-directed under emotional stimulation signals competence at a level words cannot reach. When you govern your reactions, your time, and your energy, you stop chasing alignment and start becoming it. Boundaries no longer need explanation. Presence no longer needs amplification. Respect arrives before affection because it is felt, not requested. Control yourself, and you control the frame. And when the frame is stable, attraction stops being something you pursue and starts being something that organizes itself around you. Here is the price no one tells you early enough, because it dismantles comforting illusions instead of feeding them. Women do not seek love first. They seek value. Love is not the entry point, it is the consequence. Respect always comes before affection, because instinct must recognize stability before emotion can attach. This is why so many men feel trapped in endless pursuit. They try to earn desire through effort, consistency, and emotional investment, believing that devotion will eventually be rewarded. But pursuit quietly reverses the frame. The moment you chase, you announce that value is somewhere ahead of you, not where you stand. You stop being a reference and become a request. And requests wait. The men who are remembered are not the ones who tried hardest, but the ones who held position when outcomes were uncertain. They did not demand interest. They did not negotiate attraction. They allowed space for choice. This is the distinction most men never hear. Attraction does not grow from persuasion, it grows from orientation. When your life has direction, when your time has weight, when your presence is not guaranteed, desire no longer needs to be forced. It begins to align. This does not mean withdrawing, manipulating, or becoming emotionally unavailable. It means becoming anchored. An anchored man does not need to chase signals because he generates them. He does not collapse under distance because distance does not erase his center. He does not fear silence because silence does not diminish his value. Over time, women do not attach to men who promise safety with words. They attach to men whose behavior makes safety feel inevitable. This is why clarity arrives late for most men. It requires letting go of the idea that effort equals worth. It requires accepting that attraction follows structure, not intention. When you stop chasing, something fundamental shifts. You no longer move toward desire as if it might escape you. Desire begins to move in response to where you stand. You stop asking to be chosen because your position already speaks. You stop proving because proof is unnecessary. You stop running because there is nothing to catch. You were never meant to pursue desire. You were meant to attract it by becoming the reference.